Hi everyone, welcome back to the Colour Cave. Jem here, and I'm the one who likes to play with art stuff. This is the Scrawlr challenge for July, which, as you might know by now, was quite a strange one because it was a bullet journal supply box. If you haven't seen the unboxing video and you want to see what was in the box, you can click on the card up in the corner there and that can take you there and you can see all the goodies that were in the box. This was quite an interesting one for me because I am a journaler when I'm not doodling and scribbling and that kind of thing. So I was quite excited, I'm not going to lie. However, it was kind of conflicting because it's supposed to be an art supply box and I don't really know whether I felt like it was an art supply box. However, I was still really excited to do the challenge and I was not short of ideas for it, so if you're not into journaling, I don't suppose that this video is really going to be of any interest or any use to you, but I'm going to go ahead and grab everything and we can get going. Since I decided to use the lovely patterned sheet that came in the Scrawlrbox, I thought it would be a good idea to do just a rough thumbnail before I put any ink on the paper, just in case I didn't set it out right or plan it out right. And that is quite a big step of bullet journaling for any type of page. You need to plan out and know where everything's going to be set down before you actually start getting stuck in. So I'm just really trying to decide here if everything's going to fit on the page that I want to put in. And just so there's no boo-boos a bit further down the line. I was really conflicted with this Scrawlr challenge because on one hand I was like, oh yay, BuJo supplies, and it's something that I like to do in my mixed media journal on a regular basis anyway. But on the other side of it, I was kind of like, well, you know, do this every day and it's not really what I would consider a necessarily arty pursuit. I think on top of that, just because it was the challenge, I have so many bullet journaling supplies, and with such a pretty piece of paper to work with, I really wanted to go to town with it, and I was very limited with the colours that had been provided in the supplies in the box, particularly the Staedtler fineliner, the grey pen. It was such a pale shade, it really didn't bring much to what I was looking for aesthetically. I think they would have done better if they'd given us the darker grey that is available in that particular line of pens. Despite the test that I did on the back of this sheet of paper when I did the unboxing video, I learned very quickly here that the ink going down on this paper was very, very dangerous. It was taking a long time to dry, and that was across the board between all of the pens. So you will see me shifting the paper about an awful lot during this, and I was so paranoid about not smudging it with my hand. So that's why there's a lot of kind of shuggling about going on with the paper, and it was actually quite disappointing. And you'll see further on when I actually come to start writing in the centre of the page, the brush pen didn't take particularly well, the Edding brush pen, the black one, and it was just a bit disappointing. These pens really don't mesh well with the paper. You can use them, and obviously I've done it here, the proof is in the pudding, but they really weren't built for this, so I was actually quite disappointed, although I still decided to power through, and you know, I knew that the ink would dry, but I would just have to be very careful with it. But when you're trying to do a challenge like this and you're filming it, it just makes things really difficult. Perhaps I would have been better doing something in the little notebook that was provided, because that paper is not shiny and I think the pens and everything would have been fine in there. But I wanted to use this piece of paper because, number one, I am a chronic list writer. It's one of my favourite pastimes, and also so that I could stick it into my journal on top of one of the blank pages so it could be incorporated into my general journaling use. I will show you that also nearer the end of the video as well. By this stage, I was getting quite frustrated with the ink and increasingly paranoid as time went on, and I really didn't know what to do with this pale grey pen. As I said, I just felt as if it was a bit of a waste, to be perfectly honest, and when you're on a limited colour palette with limited supplies, it really just didn't do me any favours at all. So I was just trying to find a way to incorporate it into the page where it would actually make some sort of impact or stand out in some way. So that's why when I've coloured in the sections here, I've left the alternating ones white. And it was just in the hope that the grey would maybe stand out a tiny little bit. But that I had this overwhelming urge with this design in the corner. It's so pretty. I just wanted to like fill it with colour. And I think I was quite frustrated with that as well, because I had these two shades of turquoise that were very close together, and then this sort of wishy-washy grey colour. So I was getting sort of increasingly irate as time went on. When it came to the border, I deliberately didn't pick any sort of pattern when I was colouring the sections in, and what I've tried to do is just make best use of the white of the paper, again just because I had such a limited colour selection. So I tried to use that to my advantage, and I found that the this pen, it looked much better when it had white next to it, because it just made it pop out a little bit more. So as I worked my way around the frame, I basically just picked sections at random and thought, oh, I'll colour this bit and I'll colour that section. And I tried not to have too many sections that were coloured in that were side by side. I think adjacent was the word I was looking for there. Yeah, adjacent. So here I'd cut out one of the first stickers that came in the pack, and you can see me fiddling about here trying to get the backing off it. Oh my goodness. I think as well, because I've got shellac on my nails, I didn't really have a nice edge of nail to peel it away, and I fiddled about with them for ages, but I was so pleased. I was like, yes, got there eventually. And here comes the brush pen disappointment. I just wanted to do a little bit of lettering myself and make it pretty, and it only took about 2 seconds and I realised that the ink just wasn't taken to the paper at all. It's really smudgy and it's just not saturating the paper at all, and you can see there it looks very grey in places, so I was bitterly disappointed with that. And again, I was back to this situation where I had to really watch where I was putting my big clumsy hand, because that was just going to end up in a great big smoosh across the paper. And you can see I'm trying to go back over it here to darken it down and blacken it up, but all that was happening was the ink was just sitting on top of the paper. I was probably most excited about the stamping, which is what I'm working on here, and I found the same issues as I did with the brush pen, because basically the ink really isn't designed to sit on this paper, and there was no sort of crisp defined lines. On top of that as well, it was a bit fiddly messing about with the pens to put the ink on the stamps. It would have just been much easier to give us a stamping pad. It's less messy, it's less fiddly, and we might have got better results. I don't know, it would depend on the particular ink. So I was just being really careful here when I'm stamping on these little banners with the list points underneath them. I was being very careful to make it one solid movement and not move that block about at all, so that it didn't smear, because I was going to end up in the same situation as I did with the little turquoise pencil that I'd put in just above there. So all in all, again, it was just it's like a compilation fault for the box. But I think the idea behind it was that you're supposed to use the notebook that came in the Scrawlrbox, and the paper was just a sort of added extra, if you like. So yeah, I continued on. I did manage with these list boxes though, and I was quite pleased that I managed to get them to stamp onto the paper without any sort of major disaster. So that was always a consolation of some description. I did want to use all the stamps. I was like, oh, I want to make this up pretty and use them all. So I just sort of added in a couple of the wee picture stamps that Carolina had included for us. And again, I wanted to add some colour to them, but oh my goodness, it's just back to the same issue that I had with the border. And you can see the little crayon on the left-hand side of the page just now smudged completely. So I was, again, really unhappy. The whole point of making bullet journal pages like this is that they are quite aesthetically pleasing, and just the issue with the ink on this particular paper just ruined it. When I started colouring in the banners as well, the Pitt pen was just smearing in with the brush pen that I'd used for the stamp, and it just made it really muddy, really messy. And I had left them to dry for quite some time by this point, because I did have, you know, the inkling, no pun intended, that this might happen. So overall, I was just really disappointed, and the page didn't turn out. It could have turned out a lot prettier just by simply changing the paper. That would have made all the difference. If the paper had had even a slightly more matte finish on it, I don't think we would have run into these issues. But you can see from putting down this Pitt pen that it's kind of ruined the look of it a little bit, because it just looks really untidy, really unprofessional, and a bit muddy. So now that I've put my titles in my list boxes, I am all done, da-da! And all that remains is to get out my journal and stick it into the next available page. I do have a Paper Blanks journal currently. I'm quite fond of them and they're always very pretty, and I love the cover on this one. It is so nice. So I'm just going to flick to the next available page, and conveniently this paper fits perfectly on it. I'm a bit dissatisfied with the results overall, but for the sake of the challenge, I think we did okay. So I'm calling it done. That's it. And thank you very much for joining me once again for another Scrawlr challenge. Hopefully we'll see you again. I do put out 2 videos a week, once on a Monday and once on a Friday. So feel free to come back and see us anytime for some more shenanigans with art supplies. Give us a thumbs up if you like the video and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye bye guys.